If you guys want some coins for the new Fut Fantasy promo, please check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're very fast, they're very cheap, they're very reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself 5% off your order. This supports the channel greatly. So what's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some updated 4-2-3-1 custom tactics and player instructions for after the new patch in FIFA 23. But just before we get into today's video guys, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop this video a thumbs up, as that does really help me out with the YouTube search algorithm. Also subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, let's get right into today's video. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics. For the defensive style, I like to use this on balanced. This is because it gives us the most control over our defense, so we're able to press when we need to press, and we're able to drop off and be a little bit more conservative when we need to be. So balanced does give you the very much needed control in your defensive game. Now moving on to the defensive width guys, I have this on 45. This is so we can primarily keep a narrow shape in the defense, so we can block the attacks through the middle, but at the same time the width is high enough to cover the wing, so when somebody does try and go out into the wide areas, we're also able to reach out to them and stop the attack. Now moving on to depth, I like to have this on 55. This is so we're not constantly getting pinned back with a super deep defensive line, but at the same time the defensive line isn't too high to the point where we're always getting through balled. So 55 has been nice and balanced, where you can kind of press higher up the pitch when you need to and then sit back a little bit when you need to as well. It's very balanced, which is super good. Now moving on to build up play guys, I suggest you have this on balance. This is because it's the most suited for all the types of gameplay you might experience. You know, for example, you can have fast gameplay, slow gameplay, laggy gameplay. Balanced is the most suited for all of them. If you do have fast gameplay, which is quite a rare occurrence in this game, fast build-up is super useful, but quite often the gameplay is slower, so balanced is the way to go. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I suggest you use direct passing. This is because it makes your attackers bunch up against the defensive players, meaning you can do those really overpowered isolation plays, and you also get the best movement out of them. They often give you like that extra pass option, you know, when you're in the box to sweat it to guarantee that goal, which isn't, you know, always present in other settings. Some people don't like direct passing however, so you can use something like forward runs if you like. I'm personally not a big fan of it because I feel like you're too prone to counter attacks, but some people might prefer forward runs, but direct passing is my favorite for sure. Now moving on to width guys, I have this on 47. This is so we're not too wide, so it doesn't play out like a 4-2-3-1 wide, but at the same time we're not too narrow to the point where our players are sat on top of each other. So this is kind of like a nice balanced width, which works very well with this formation. Now moving on to players in box, I have this on 6, so I can get some players into the box to create chances, but at the same time we don't overcommit our entire team to the point where we get counter attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a corner kick routine that I use which requires me to have them on 1. There is a link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now for the players you want to use guys, in the striker position, because this is a one striker formation, I do suggest you use a more well-rounded striker. This is because you have to compensate for the fact that there is only one striker instead of 2 in this formation, so it's nice to get a well-rounded player in this position. For example, in a 2-striker formation you can get the balance between the 2 forwards, so you could have like a lengthy player like Haaland and then a more agile player like Ben Yedder right next to him, but in this formation you need to get all that balance into one player, which is why I use Robbie Keane, because he's got the perfect well-rounded stats with the 5-star weak foot. So, you know, I do suggest using a well-rounded player, but that being said, if you want to use, you know, like a lengthy player or an explosive player, for example, that's completely up to you. Now, moving on to the wide cams, guys, you're going to want to use winger style players. These are players with like 5-star skills, fast players, players that are really good at dribbling, passing, shooting, basically very good in their attacking game. You're not going to want to use somebody clunky and somebody with no creative ability, otherwise this won't work out too well. So there's not too much to say there, but just make sure you're using good winger style players. Now for the central cam, you're going to want to use a nice technical player. This is somebody that is agile, so they can turn and really work the angles. You're going to want somebody with a decent decent enough passing ability, a good shooting ability, and obviously a good dribbling ability. Just go for a nice technical player in this cam position, otherwise you will struggle quite a lot. Now for the left CDM, I like to use a more defensive CDM. This is somebody that's going to stay back and add defensive support. You know, I'm using the flashback Jorginho here. The perfect work rate for this player is a medium-high work rate, but if you can't get that work rate, don't worry too much. Just go for a more defensive player here. Now in the right CDM spot, we go for more of a box-to-box style player. This is somebody that's going to attack and defend, so we're using the flashback Paul Pogba. He's got very well-rounded stats, which is super useful, and a high-medium work rate. Now, a high work rate is the most ideal for this position, but again, don't worry too much if you can't get that. As for the left back and the right back, I like to go for a bit of a balance between the two, where I have Roberto Carlos, who's a bit more attacking minded and will add extra support going forward for us, and then I have one more defensively solid player in Cafu. I just like to have that dynamic between the two fullbacks, but you guys can do whatever you please there. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, these just need to be as good as you can get them. For player instructions, guys, on the striker, we just have stay central. This is important because we don't want this player drifting off to the wide areas, especially since we've only got one striker. We always need him to be in those central areas, so he's always there to finish off those chances, and we don't really need him to cover the wings, as we've already got two wide players on each side. We also have him on mixed attack because it is much better for the build-up play. If you have him on getting behind, sometimes he feels very disconnected from the rest of the team, and it makes the formation very one-dimensional, which is not too useful. As for the central cam, we just completely leave him alone because we don't want to restrict this player all that much, so we just have him on default settings. For both the wide cams, we have them on get into the box for cross. Now, the reason we do this is because by default, if you have them on balance crossing runs, when we get around to the penalty area, they're very static and they don't really do much. They kind of just watch and let things happen. So if you put them on get into the box for cross, it means they're always going to make those transitional runs to get more involved in the attacks in those areas. So I think it's super important to have them both on get into the box for cross. Now for the left CDM, the more defensive CDM, we have stay back while attacking, cut passing lanes and cover centre. We have him on stay back. This is pretty self-explanatory because obviously we want him to stay back. He's a more defensive minded player. We have him on cut passing lanes, so he's always there to break up the play and it can sometimes kickstart quick attacks. And we have him on cover centre because we need him to cover those central areas. We don't need any more players covering the wing as we've already got two on each side. So for example, on this side, we've already got Di Maria and Roberto Carlos. Now for the more box-to-box style centre mid, CDM, we have him on default settings and we have him on cover centre. The reason we have him on default settings is because we don't really want to restrict this player too much. We want him to be able to attack and defend and have a bit more of a free role to help us transition a lot better. We also have him on cover centre like Jorginho because we need this player to cover the central areas opposed to the wings. Now for the left back, the more attacking fullback, we have balanced attack and overlap. This is because the 4-2-3-1, albeit one of the wider narrow formations, is still quite a narrow formation, so sometimes we need that extra wide option, which is why this fullback going forward really does help. So by putting this player on balanced attack and overlap, it means he's going to commit to the attack and he's going to add another wide option, so he can play narrow and wide at the same time, and it's super unpredictable to play against. Now for the more defensive minded fullback, we have stay back while attacking and overlap. The reason we do this is because we always want at least three at the back to make us as defensively sound as possible, and we have him on overlap because let's say I do trigger a run forward with him with L1, I want him to make the overlapping runs like Roberto Carlos to add the wide option. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, we leave them on default settings and we don't change a thing. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-3-1. If you guys have enjoyed or found this useful, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and I'll catch you all later. Peace.